Good morning, Vineyard family. It's so good to be with you. Becky and I have actually been out in Florida meeting with our new leadership team for the 414 Window Movement, and that's been quite an event. I was thinking about today, I have 3 more times to share with you before I step out of my role as leading this church, and I'm really excited today. And over these next few weeks, including today, I want to leave with you some of the things that are really dear to my heart and dear to my heart for this church. One of the ways that we have been known in this community from the very beginning is a people who serve each other, who serve the Lord, who serve our community, are willing to wash the feet and take the lowest places. And it's been a mark that we see everyone as our neighbor, as someone to be loved. And this morning I want to talk to you about, as we move into the Easter season, a time when Jesus met with his disciples, known as the Last Supper. And it was at the beginning of that moment is what I want to draw your attention to in just a moment. But I want to talk to you about the heart of a servant. Jesus, that was you. Sure was. In every way, from the beginning to the end, you came to serve humanity. You came to serve the Father, your Father. And you served us, ultimately, by giving your life on a cross. And every day of your life on this earth, you gave it away to others. And you left us an example of where life is. That life is giving ourselves away. And that's really living. And Jesus, so many people in this world, they don't get that one yet. But you did. And so many of us here today do. And I ask, Lord, that you would continue to mark this church with the heart of a servant as you've served us. That we serve you by serving those around us. And I ask, Lord, that you would just use me to maybe just to reestablish again this mandate that you've given to us. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. There was a time in the Bible that there was a mom who was looking for an inside track for her sons. And she came up to Jesus and kind of coerced him. And there's 2 different accounts. In one account, it's the mom. And the other account, it's the guys themselves that say, hey, when you come to your kingdom, when we're all done with this mess on earth, how about, this is James and John, by the way, how about you give James the right and me the left, side of you when you come into your kingdom? Another account talks about it was the mom who did that. I think they were in cahoots together. And Jesus said, what are you doing? What are you talking about? I think it was heartbreaking for him, because this is toward the end of, not the beginning. It's just like, you guys don't get it. You realize what you're asking for? You're asking for position. You're asking for prominence. You're asking for places of honor. Is that what I've taught you? Is that what you've seen in me? He goes on in that same passage. Jesus called them together, called the disciples together to deal with this, and he makes some really important statements. He says, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles, the Romans, they lord it over them. They dominate them. And their high officials exercise authority over them. And then he says something profound. He said, not so with you. Let me say it again. Not so with you. It's their way, but it's not our way. It's all around you. People say jump and you say how high. But in my kingdom, it doesn't work that way. And then he goes on, instead of that, whoever wants to be great among you, he doesn't say it's wrong to want to be great, by the way. You must be your servant. You want to be great? Any among you wants to be great. James, John, Mom, you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man, that's when he inserts himself into this. Did not come to be served, but to serve. And to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, we read this and we know we want to serve the Lord, right? But he said, when I came the first time here, I didn't come to be served. I didn't come to be crowned king. I came to serve. And I think he'd say, I came to show you a better way, or maybe a different way, or an upside down way, or going upstream kind of way. It's a powerful picture of upside down, counterintuitive leadership. If you want to be great, then humble yourself and be last and serve everybody. He used the word slave. Lower yourself. I really believe that at the end of the day, my highest achievement is I can be servants of his vision. This idea, I'm looking for my ministry, I'm looking for the vision for my life. It's like, there's a point we got to get over ourselves. It's his vision, it's his life that we serve. And we align ourselves as servant of his mission. And I find it interesting, when God chose to connect with humans, he chose to do it as a servant. What's up with that? He chose to do it as a servant. An interesting story that's found in Luke chapter 14 about attitudes. And Jesus was in a situation at a banquet where he noticed something was kind of upside down, and he used it to tell a story. It says, when Jesus noticed, this is in Luke 14, that all who had come to the dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them this advice. By the way, have you ever been in a situation, a concert, or in a room with important people, and you just like, I got to get up front. I got to come early and get the best seat. By the way, the best seats in church are usually at the back and on the end. I noticed that. You got to come early to get those because they can take it easy. But when somebody is important in the room, it's like, I want to be over here. You know, and so something's going down here. But he says, when you are invited to a wedding feast, I would say with big name people there, don't sit in the seat of honor. What if someone who is more distinguished than you has also been invited? The host will come and say, give this person your seat. What are you doing here? Then you will be embarrassed, and you will have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. Instead, I like that Jesus doesn't just leave us hanging. Instead, here's how it works. Take the lowest place at the foot of the table. Start there. When you walk into a room, it's not about here I am, it's there you are. Big difference in that. And so when you walk into a room, it's not, hey, it's, you look around and you find the least place and you plant yourself there. Then when your host sees you, he says, he will come and say, friend, we have a better place for you. Then you'll be honored in front of all the other guests. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. There's a powerful lesson in this. It's about not presuming status or honor upon ourselves. You know, the Bible talks about let somebody else praise you rather than having to praise yourself. Look for the end of the table and don't pout when the host doesn't come up and move you up. You know, I like this story. All right, I'll sit over here and wait for the host to bring me to the head of the table. What if the host doesn't come and bring you to the head of the table? He just leaves you right where you are. Are you okay with that? It's like, I don't like this food and I don't like this people. You know, it's not an easy thing when I think of my life and journey and ministry to be content with where you are. There were so many times in my life I felt, especially early on as a young man, underappreciated, undervalued, obscure, not seen. I was in a small town in California raising 2 teenage boys when I was 23. And I'd have people come and say, you know, God has more for you than this. And yet I didn't see more than this. I just saw my brothers and I saw this small little town. And you know what? I purposed then, God, if you have somewhere else for me to be, this is your deal, not mine. Because this is where I am and I'm going to be content here. And if you have somewhere else for me to be, when that time comes, you tell me. Because I'm going to give my life here. And particularly to my 13 and 15-year-old brother that were pretty much abandoned by my mother and given to me. And then it was a number of years later in 1981. Some of you know this story. I was driving through, Fort Collins for the first time and then to to Cheyenne and eating at Shakey's Pizza and too much pizza and too much chicken. And then on the way to Iowa, had this overwhelming sense, quit your job. I was a principal of high school, just hired. Moved to Fort Collins and started church. And I look back on that now emotionally. It's like, I waited for God, and then I didn't even want to come here, by the way, just so you know. I didn't want to be a pastor, and I didn't want to move to Fort Collins. I was entrenched where I was. But I said, I'll do it, and it's been the greatest journey of my life to be here. But I had to wait for God to decide when that time was. And God asked you to be faithful in the small things, in the hidden things, in the behind-the-scene things. And he hid me on purpose because I needed to be hidden because my pride would have killed me. My need for exposure, my need to be important would have destroyed me and destroyed whatever future God had for me. And there was healing that needed to take place in my life to even to move here and begin the journey in this church. But what I want to say, being faithful today leads to promotion tomorrow. Let me say it again. Being faithful in your marriage, in the things of your life, in your job, in your ministry, in what's your life today. The way forward is being faithful in obscurity, being faithful in hard, challenging times. And let God promote you if and when he decides to do it. You know, I love Joshua's story. He was, when Moses chose Joshua, and God chose Joshua through Moses, he was Moses' aide, butler. He wasn't preparing himself to be the deliverer of Israel and take over Moses' place. He just served. And all of a sudden, as just serving Moses as a butler, it's like, hey, surprise Joshua, it's you. What? And it was his faithfulness to serve another man's vision that opened the door when God was ready for Joshua. You can wait for God. You can trust that God has your best in his mind for you, and that you don't have to make it happen. And when you do make it happen, I usually give this talk for leaders, by the way, and pastors. But when you make it happen, and you coerce and you work yourself to the front of the line and you get what you want, it's so empty at the end of the day because you don't have any sense that God gave it to you. And it can be so empty and fleeting. Waiting for God, it's huge and yet hard to do. Saul couldn't wait in the Old Testament, for Samuel to come and offer the sacrifices. I got stuff to do. And he didn't wait for Samuel to come, and it cost him his throne. David refused to take Saul's throne until God was ready to give him the throne. And that was David's thing. He's like, you know what? I've anointed to be king, but I will not be king until God says I'm king. I am not going to take over this man's throne, no matter what is going on. And, out of this, I want to say that pride is a thief. By the way, if you're new to the Vineyard, this is bottom line stuff today. Because I think we're all leaders in one way or the other, by the way. Pride is a thief, and it ruins us. Have you seen pride ruin people? Have you seen people start small and then get big and they're ruined? They're captured by it, captivated by it, destroyed by it. And that's when Jesus is saying, guys, don't go that way. Not so with you. That's their way. It's not our way. Don't believe this lie, because it will destroy you. And one of the things I love to say when you think somebody's hindering you from what you think you should have, this is when you can take to the bank. I believe that no one, this is what I've learned over my 37 years now here, no one can stop God's will for your life except you. Nobody can stop God's will from taking place in your life except you. You're the only one that can stop it. And so it's not pointing fingers at the mom and dad you didn't have, the opportunities you didn't have, what happened to you along the way, and this person and that person, if only. None of that matters. The only one that can thwart God's intent for your life is you. So you have control of that. And then God does too. And the wonder about it means you have no one to blame. And you can trust God somehow. God, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm assuming you do. And I'm going to trust you. You ever been in those places? Are you in one right now where there's something in your life? It's like, wow, God, this isn't good, but I'm going to trust you to walk me through this. It doesn't mean we don't have things to do and decisions to make and risks to step into. But what I would say at the end of the day, if God doesn't give it to you, you really don't want it. This new assignment that has been offered to me that I've spent a week involved with is so far over my head. And it's just like, I would never choose it. I wouldn't. But God has offered it to me. And you need to wait for that to happen. So let's move toward Easter. Jesus' last supper with his boys. He knew what was coming, and now the time had come. And so in this particular evening, gathering at the table, they had all come into this place, and I've been to that very place where the upper room would have been. And that's kind of interesting because it's kind of an obscure out to the side of the city of Jerusalem. And when they came inside, the disciples had kind of graduated from how they saw themselves as a servant. Because it was customary when you would walk into a room, and if you're the students of a rabbi, of which they were, disciples of someone like Jesus, when you would go in, you would get to the bucket and you would wash your feet and the feet of others that would come in from all the things that had happened during the day before the meal, because they would sit on the floor, and so their feet is right where they're eating. So it's really a big deal. And but on this day, nobody did that. And they all just kind of forgot themselves. They sat at the table, and then Jesus gets up, and he's going to do what they were unwilling to do. So he got up from the table, and he took off his robe, and he wrapped a towel around his waist, and he poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet. Outrageous. Never happens. Wrong. Don't do it. Jesus. Over and over again, he would step out of what people expected. And then he begins to wash, to the horror of the disciples, to begin to wash the disciples' feet. And then drying them with the towel that he had around them. You talk about silence. There's no way there was anybody talking. This had to be a silent moment. Oh, what have we done? Why didn't we do this? We forgot. We've lost ourselves. Now he's doing it. And when Jesus came to Simon Peter, I like Simon Peter because he says what others are thinking. You know anybody like that? People are saying, but you get somebody else, I'll tell you what everybody's thinking. When he came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? It's like, really? And Jesus replied, you don't understand now what I'm doing, but someday you will. Later on, Peter, you get what I'm doing and why I'm doing this. I want to show you something. And Peter goes, no. How about that one? Say no to Jesus straight up. No, Peter protested, you will never wash my feet. You can do anything else, but you're not washing these dirty, stinking feet of mine. I'm not letting you do that. Sometimes it's humbling yourself to serve others. Sometimes it means humbling yourself to let others serve you. Because we don't want to be embarrassed or whatever it might be. Isn't that true? You'll never wash my feet. And then I love this one. All right, here's how it goes, Peter. Unless I wash you, you won't belong to me. And Simon Peter exclaimed, as he does to the extreme, well, then wash my hands and my head, Lord, not just my feet. Give me a bath. And Jesus said, you know what? Just your feet, Peter. That works. We don't need to get, no, I'm not washing your whole body here. And after washing their feet, he put on his robe again and he sat down and he asked. And it was a big moment. Do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. I think that's an important statement in this story, because it says, don't misunderstand. I didn't do this because I'm less than who you thought me to be. That's not why I did that. I am your teacher, your rabbi, and your Lord. You got that one right, because that's what I am. And since, I like this, and since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, what would you think what's coming now? Now that I've washed your feet, you can wash my feet. That's kind of how I think you're going. I think Peter's already reaching for the bucket. I know this one. I know what's coming. And I'm going to race to Jesus' feet. And as he's going for that bucket, and Jesus says, watch one another's feet, I could just see, and he's looking at Nathaniel's dirty feet. It's like, oh, no. I'll wash Jesus' feet. There's not a person in this room, if Jesus presented himself in the flesh in this room and said, wash my feet, boy, we'd be racing to the front, right? But if he washed your feet, and he has, by serving us and giving his life for us, and ultimately the lesson here is so powerful. It's like, here's how it works. Now that I've washed your feet and served you and loved you, love them. You served me by serving others. You served me by serving the least of these, the untouchables, the outcasts, or whoever it might be. And then he says, I've given you an example to follow. Do as I've done for you. He didn't beat them down. He called them up to something. And ultimately, it's like, be like me. I find it interesting. If this was Jesus' early days with the disciples, in an orientation, I'd get it. But the last act that Jesus did with his disciples before partaking of what is known as the Last Supper is that he stooped down and washed their feet. He says, do as I've done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. God will bless you for doing them, not for knowing them. Sometimes Christians, and I used to be one of these people that just, if I believe it and know it, then I'm in. That's what. But it's not about just knowing it. When you put into practice Vineyard family, friends, when you begin to live out what you believe, it's life-changing for you and for those around you. Not believing different. And not just behaving different in your worship and your expression of faith. But when you allow it to permeate your being and how you see and how you respond and how you treat others, it's life-giving for you and for others. And I've seen it. I'm most alive when I give my life away. When it's about Rico, and it's my thing, it's what about me? It's just like it's death creeping in. You ever notice that? But when I'm giving my life to somebody, many of you, and things have happened, and I think back in all those middle of the night calls when somebody's died or something tragic has happened. It's a privilege to serve, be involved in somebody else's world, and sometimes I go away drained and overwhelmed, but then it's just like, this is life. as it was meant to live for each and every one of us. You know, it was just not so much earlier when Jesus came into Jerusalem for this all to go down, and the olive branches, and they were wanting to anoint him as King of the Jews, and they wanted to crown Jesus, and they wanted to make him their king, but it wasn't time for that. Sometimes people, particularly even Christians, we're looking for crowns when we should be looking for this. When we think about our mark, it's not our steeples, it's not our buildings, it's not our programs, it's not our numbers. That Jesus identified at the end with something as simple as a towel. And they wanted to give him the crown, and it would have been easy to take. And even when he was in the wilderness and tempted by the devil, Satan wanted to crown him then. If he would bow down and serve him. He said, I'll crown you right now, Jesus. You don't have to go through all this stuff. You don't have to give your life. You don't have to die. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to go to the cross. Just bow down to me and I'll crown you right now. You'll be my king. And so he rejected that. Beginning to end, Jesus embraces his mission with the towel, seeking the lost, performing miracles for those that are sick, touching the poor and the marginalized, casting out demons, loving people, praying and fasting, and other activities showing his heart for humanity, ultimately giving his life on a cross. You know, Jesus died on the cross not because, hey, I think I'll do this. He died because I needed him to, and you needed him to. That's what was needed to bring us home, to free us, to forgive us. The only crown that Jesus wore that I can find this side of heaven was a crown of thorns, and I guess you can have that one. So if you want a crown, there's one available maybe. And they put that one on him. They did. The only crown Jesus ever wore was a crown of thorns, of humiliation, of pain. So I guess if you want that one, you can have it. So the people that are looking for crowns today, Jesus didn't have any to give. He does have plenty of towels. Somebody smile at me. He's got plenty of towels. He's got lots of those if you want one of those. You know, I'm thinking of where to take this. That you know, in heaven the Bible talks about we're going to have a crown. That's kind of cool, but just wait for it. You know, it's like you ever have that moment? Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. It's come. Wait, here it is. That's what heaven is. Because when heaven comes, it's like he's going to come into you and me. He's going to put that crown on. Well done. I'm so proud. It's like, that's sort of cool. But this side of heaven, this is our symbol, I think, for our life. And in a moment, I'm going to encourage you to come up in the front or the back as part of our response time and to grab one of these. How many of you already have one? I did this a few years ago, okay? Actually, a number of you do, a lot of you don't. And when you get one of these, if you choose it, there's going to be a crown on top of these. You're going to have to reject the crown and choose the towel. Jesus chose it. And I think he's asking us to choose it again and again and again. And then when you have this, I want you to put this somewhere where you don't lose it. Some people put it in their guitar case if they're a musician or worship leader or on their drum kit. Or they put it in their Bible, or they take it to work and put it on their desk or at home. I keep one in my car because that's the one place I forget that I'm a servant of humanity. I am serious. I have it up there, and every time I think I should, and it's like I look at that, it's like, okay. So I'd say put it where you don't lose it and put it where you need it. I have a few of them. I have one on my desk. I have one at home. because I can't forget this, because if I forget this, I lose. And he loses as well, what he has in store for me. So I would encourage you, when I think about this for you, when's the last time you've cleaned a restroom in a place that you shouldn't be cleaning restrooms? What if you're a business owner? Maybe it's your business. What's the last time your employees saw you going into the restroom with a bucket to clean it? Not that you're going to do that all the time. When have you, if you're in that kind of role of prominence, have you stepped out of that role to do something unthinkable like Jesus did? I think it's a powerful thing. Think about your workplace. Think about your school, our church, roommates. Who's going to do those dishes? Who's going to make that bed? Who's going to do something? This week, I might lose this in a moment, so I'm going to just jump it. This week, I didn't ask you, when you take this, do one thing this week that is up to now not on your radar screen, you wouldn't even think of doing. And maybe that you would have seen a little beneath you. Choose it, find it, look for it. I'm going to do something. Maybe it's going to McDonald's and sitting with a homeless person and offering them a meal. I don't know what it would look like for you in your normal space or in a new space, but to get this rooted, I encourage you this week to do that. And I encourage you not to tell anybody. Just do it. Didn't have to keep a secret, but just do this one. You don't have to keep everything a secret because we motivate each other by good deeds. The Bible says that. But on this one, let's just do it. Right here. So lastly, I want to leave you with these words, and I'm going to be quiet and we'll get on with this. Philippians 2. Do nothing out of selfish ambition. And these are words I want to give this church and me moving forward. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross.